Thank you for tuning in. This is Exciting Bible Questions with Pastor Joseph Carty, where we take real practical Bible questions and answer them. The first question today is, when King Saul went to see the witch of Endor, did he really speak with the prophet Samuel?
This is a great question. Actually, the story goes like this. King Saul was very zealous for the Lord at one point in his life. In fact, he hated evil and he loved good so much that he was out destroying all idol worshippers and all mediums and witches. But later on in Paul's life, he turns his back on God, and eventually God ends up no longer speaking to King Saul through his prophets any longer. Then, in fact, the prophet Samuel dies of old age, and Israel's situation gets worse. Finally, it gets to the point where Israel's in very extreme danger because there's an invading army. And normally the king at this point would go and talk to the prophet of the Lord and see what to do. But the prophet Samuel had died, and God didn't raise up another prophet to talk to King Saul because he was an evil king. So King Saul was terrified about the situation, and so he ended up doing something foolish. In 1 Samuel chapter 28, verse 7, it says, Saul then said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, so that I can go and consult her." And his servants replied, "There is a woman in Endor who is a medium." So, not long ago, Saul was out killing witches and mediums because that's what God commanded him. Now all of a sudden he's desperate and ungodly, and he's going to a medium for advice. When he gets there, he asks the medium to bring up the prophet Samuel. As the story goes on, supposedly Samuel the prophet comes up and gives a prophecy. He tells the king that he and his 3 sons are going to die in battle with this invading army. Now, the very interesting fact is that the prophecy actually comes true. They do die. So many people have believed that this actually was the prophet Samuel who came up. He came back from the dead to tell the story. I actually don't believe that is true. Now, here are some reasons why. Here are some questions that you should ponder if you're thinking that that really was Samuel the prophet. Here's the question. This woman was a witch or a medium. In fact, in the King James Version, it says that she's a woman of familiar spirits. That means basically like demon spirits. She's not someone that works with God, in other words. When was the last time that in the Bible you found any medium or witch or woman with familiar spirits that was a servant of God? Never. In fact, in Leviticus, it says, go find all sorcerers and spirit worshippers and women with familiar spirits and mediums and kill them because they're not of God. That was why at one point King Saul was out killing witches. Later on he goes to see a witch. The point is this woman is a witch, a medium. That's in the book of 1 Corinthians, it lists all the people that are going to hell, and it says sorcerers are going to hell. This is like the same thing, a medium or a witch or a sorcerer. All of those things are equivalent. People that try to speak to the dead, people who try to speak to spirits. Here's my point. If this woman was a witch and she has nothing to do with God, what in the world, who does she work for? Obviously she doesn't work for God, she works for Satan. Now, here's my next question. If she really works for Satan, does Satan have the power to resurrect the dead? The answer is simple, no. Satan does not have power to resurrect the dead. So was this really Samuel the prophet? No. It was an apparition of him created by Satan or his angels. In Revelation chapter 16, verse 14, the Bible says that there are spirits of devils that have power to work miracles. This is just one of those miracles. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about this witch of Endor and a little bit more about mediums and spirits and communicating with the dead, I have an entire Bible study that I'd like to share with you for free. It's called The Witch of Endor. Just call the toll-free number and I'll give it to you.
If you are listening and would like a copy of this free book, the number for this is 855-41-TRUTH. The number again is 855-418-7884.
There's also some other information if you'd like that's really great. There's a website called ghosttruth.com. That's www.ghosttruth.com.
The second question for today: why does the Bible say not to judge?
Actually, this is probably the most quoted, or I should say misquoted, verse in the entire Bible. A lot of people think that the most quoted verse is John 3:16. It's not really true. Probably the most quoted verse is "Don't judge me." But I say it's misquoted because many people only quote part of it and they don't share what the rest of the verse says, and that leads to a misunderstanding of the verse. So let me read the entire verse. This comes from Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. It says, "Do not judge, so that you won't be judged. For with the judgment you use, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but don't notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' and look, there's a log in your own eye? Hypocrite, first take the log out of your eye, then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." Now, what I want you to notice is what the text is saying. It is not saying that you should never judge. In fact, the very last verse says, once you have the log out of your eye, you can help your brother take the speck out of his own eye. The point of the verse is, do not try to help somebody take the speck out of their eye when you have a gigantic log sticking out of your own eye. I want to make this point clear because the Bible teaches that it is not wrong to judge brothers and sisters if we do it with the right heart and the right intention, the right motivation, and we're not in sin, deeply in sin too. Let me show you another verse where it says something like this. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "Brothers, if someone is caught in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual should restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves so that you also won't be tempted." Now this verse clearly says that we should try to help our friends, family, or church members that end up falling into sin. But Paul also adds a warning to this, to make sure to do it with a gentle and humble spirit, and to make sure that we do it lovingly, that we don't end up in the same situation. In fact, in chapter 6 of Galatians, the next verse goes on to say that we need to watch out for each other, and this is the way we can watch out for each other. The point is clear. We can watch out for each other by pointing each other toward Christ. Now, if we're walking toward Christ with our brothers and sisters and one of them falls off the path, we ought to work to help them get back on the path. That is, if they're willing. To do this process, you have to judge them in some way to notice that they've fallen off the path. The admonition of Jesus is simple. "Judge not that you be not judged," is not talking about people who are trying to help their brothers toward Christ. When Christ said, "Judge not lest you be not judged," he's saying, don't have a condemning spirit. Don't go out to condemn people just to judge them in order to condemn them. They're people who are going out and condemning people. "Oh, you're going to hell. You're doing this. Oh, I can't believe you. You're going to hell. God's never going to forgive you." If our heart is truly to help people, God actually admonishes us to, with a humble heart, judge them and lead them back to Christ. But if our motivation is only gossip or condemnation, then God simply says not to judge. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit more about judging and judgment, just call our toll-free number, and I'll send you a free Bible study guide called Case Closed.
The number to call for this free book is 855-41-TRUTH. 855-418-7884. Now for our final question today. Why does it say that Jesus was in the middle of the earth for 3 days?
Another great question. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 40, it says, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Now there are actually 2 questions to answer here. The first question is, how did the 3 days and 3 nights transpire? And the second question is, where is the heart of the earth that Jesus was in? Now, I probably only have enough time to answer the first question very good. The second question I'll just have to give a short answer, but maybe another time I can explain more clearly from the Bible why I'm answering it this way. So, where is the heart of the earth that Jesus was in? Well, the short answer to the question is this: Jesus was in the tomb. Jesus was simply in the tomb until he was resurrected. Now let me focus on answering the first question. How can I explain the 3 days and 3 nights? Now, I believe, like most people, that Jesus died on Friday afternoon and he rose from the grave early Sunday morning. That's why we call it Easter Sunday, because Jesus rose on Sunday morning. But he actually died what was called Preparation Day, the day before the Sabbath, which was Friday. Friday was Preparation Day. So he died Friday afternoon. Now, you may be thinking, wait a minute, how do you get 3 days and 3 nights out of that? Well, for the Jews, the days began and ended from sunset to sunset. So when the sun went down on Friday night, it was now the beginning of Saturday. And when the sun went down on Saturday night, it was now the beginning of Sunday in the Jewish mind. Therefore, there was 3 days. A few hours on Friday, all day Saturday, and a few hours on Sunday. So to the Jewish mind, any portion of a day was counted as if it was a full day. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days. Now I know what you're thinking. That's still not 3 nights. But here's something that we must think about. There are 17 times in the Bible where Jesus or his friends spoke of this timetable involving his death and resurrection. 10 times it was specified that the resurrection would take place on the 3rd day. That was the exact phrase, on the 3rd day. 5 times they stated it like this: in or within 3 days. Twice they used the term, quote, after 3 days. And one time Jesus spoke of it 3 days and 3 nights. Now here's the first point. All of these times are talking about the same thing. All of them are referring to Jesus' death and resurrection. So all of them are equivalent in the mind of the Jews. Does that make sense? If all of them are talking about the death and the resurrection, then all of them are equivalent. They all equal the same amount of time. But when we look at these phrases, we think, well, that's not exactly the same. On the 3rd day, in or within 3 days, after 3 days, and 3 days and 3 nights. That's not exactly the same time frame in our westernized mind. So we have to understand that when we use the term within 3 days, we would mean that to say that within 72 hours or before 72 hours has passed, then something's going to happen. But then we use the term after 3 days. That means sometime after 72 hours from now, then something is going to happen. But these people used the same phrase to mean the same thing. Jesus used, at one point he said on the 3rd day, at another point he said within 3 days, at another point he said after 3 days, and another point he said 3 days and 3 nights. You know, we're being a little bit too nitpicky, is the point. When we say, oh no, that only equals 3 days, that doesn't equal 3 nights. The Bible's contradicting itself. If we just understand this simple concept, that all of these 3 phrases in the minds of the Jews are the same thing. The only reason Jesus used the phrase 3 days and 3 nights is because he was purposely using the illustration of Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the well 3 days and 3 nights. And so Jesus is saying, just like he was in there 3 days and 3 nights, that's how I'm going to be. But he didn't literally mean 3 nights. He just said 3 days is what his point was. Now, if you'd like to study this out a little bit more, I'm going to send you a free book. If you just go ahead and call the number, the book is called 3 Days and 3 Nights. Now, thanks for listening. This is Exciting Bible Questions, and this is Pastor Joseph Carty, pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Churches in Gordon, Valentine, Hyannis, and Springview.
The number to call for this free book is 855-41-TRUTH. 855-418-7884. And this is Raluca Carty. Tune in next week